Hello, it's Doug from Behind Closed Doors, and in this video is going to be part of a playlist from something that I did a little while ago with a friend of mine called Paul. We did a little podcasty thing called Better Ways of Being, and this was recorded, so this is an extract from it. And I think it would be really helpful for anyone that's in a really difficult situation and they have trouble seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, if you can change the way that you look at things, the things you look at can change. And as we look at in this video, if you change your story, you can change your life. Sometimes it starts with just changing your perspective on things, from being in a very negative place to being in a positive place. Even though your life situation is the same, your attitude changes, and it changes the way in which you behave and react to things. And it puts you in a better position than if you were to just be defeatist and nihilistic. So I hope this is very helpful for anyone that's in a difficult situation and they'd like to change their life. I think you've got a story which has a beginning, a middle, and end, and a narrative, and I think you have the characters in it, and you're one of the characters in it, and we're acting out stories. I think that's the one thing, and then the other thing that we have is we'll put it as the all-seeing eye, the observer of the story. So there's living with yourself. So that's the two different people. I noticed I was doing this kind of thing, and so I think when you're in here, you're kind of safe from the story and your ego protection. Whereas when you put your awareness and consciousness into here, you can very get easily lost in the emotional roller coaster ride of acting out your life and reacting and responding with your kind of base animalistic kind of primeval responses that are going to take over, because we're designed to stay alive and not die. We're not designed for enlightenment. Do you know what I mean? We're designed to have babies. We're not designed to see truth. So this universal like consciousness, or this awareness, is something that we all share, no matter which body we have. We all know that we're having an experience, and that we're observing the own experience of our life, our own living avatar, so to speak, my body, your body. But the consciousness that exists in my body and yours is the same consciousness. It stems from the same source.
Yeah.
So I think when you tap into this and you step out your story, you step out your ego, you step out of your personal way of viewing the world, you tap into the fact that just the fact that you can have an experience right here and now is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The fact that you're just aware now and present, because you tap into that. And when you tap into that and somebody else taps into that, you can resonate with somebody, because it doesn't matter about your human body and all your primitive, primeval stuff that you've got going on. And that's how people can do it with animals. You look at an animal, the animal looks at you. Now, you really don't know, but you know that that animal's conscious. And it's got a life in it, because it's the difference between something that's alive and something that isn't alive.
Yeah.
And like when somebody dies, like, the moment they're there, and then the next minute they're not. Well, what's not there? Because the body's still there. This is still there. Like, physically, everything is still there. But it's who that person is. Do you know what I mean? Oh, what were they? Their heartbeat? They're just organs.
Their consciousness isn't there.
Yeah. That it's the observer and the observed. And when you believe that you're the observed, what kind of story are you telling yourself about who you are as the observed character, as your avatar, I like to call it?
Yeah. And where are you getting that story from? What, in other words, you're brought up to believe that, I don't know, going to school is essential, and learning these facts at school is essential. So from any given time period, there'll be a set of things at the minute that we learn, and you're told that you must learn those things, and some of them may be misleading. You know, when I went to school, there were 9 planets. There are 8 now. How can that be? Were there 9 or are there 8, right? And actually, does it really matter whether there are 9 or 8 planets, right? And my point being is that you are spoon-fed, a story that you should adhere to, because then you are good. Like earlier we had a conversation where you said, be a good boy. You be a good boy, Doug. Play by the rules. Well, who invented the rules? And when they did invent the rules, why did they invent them that way? So if we don't question all of that, then we don't know why we're have the beliefs we have in the first place.
And what's the purpose of having the rules?
And what's the purpose
And
of
who's
the
it
belief in the
benefiting?
rules, and who are they benefiting, and all that? 'Cause
And it should be right to be able to ask questions, because you're not disagreeing with it. You're just asking for
we're just questioning.
specifics.
We're
You're
asking for
saying,
clarification.
Cool, okay, I'll do that, but tell me why. And that's where why comes into it.
Yeah, I want clarification as to
Yeah.
why that makes me a good person. Because the observer, the bit of us that we all have, however tied in and bought into this story we are, still does that. And so Eckhart would say that there are two kind of modes. If you're closer to enlightenment, and there's a much more an awareness of this part of you, then you'll live in constant discomfort of this doesn't quite sit right.
What
Where-
doesn't sit right, sorry?
The story.
Yeah, because you know it's not true.
Because you know it's not true. And the more conscious you get, the more you realise this just is a myth.
Yeah. You're
Just
acting
is-
out a story.
You're acting out a story that's you are an avatar in the real world. By definition, you have become an avatar of your mind. Your mind's going, this is the story we have to do. I have to go out, make money, be successful, get a nice car, get married, do whatever it might be, right? Then your mind sends this chunk of stuff off into the world to go do that. Oh, it needs to look like this. I'll grow a beard, or I'll shave my head, or I'll wear these clothes, or I'll do this, and that will make me okay, right? And that's what. And so this is where marketing comes in. So this is where malevolence will manipulate. Oh, they've got this story, and we know we can actually manipulate it, because if we show lots of people pictures of really successful people, they'll buy our shit, right? And then we've told them if they buy our shit, they'll feel better about themselves, and everything will be okay. Right, and that's manipulative, and that's where. But here's the rub. What happens then is we do all of that stuff. We go out, get lots of money, buy our car, and we're sitting there and we're fucking miserable because we know we're going. But this is supposed to make me happy, and it's not. So we all intuitively know that this story, and however that story is manipulated, however that story is created by whoever it's created, lacks substance, isn't necessarily true, and certainly doesn't give us fulfillment. Because this part of us, whether we are consciously aware of it or not, niggles away and says, "Why? Because if it were true, you'd just be happy. You get your Ferrari and you'd be happy, right?"
Yeah, I think it's a bit more. I think this is where huge changes can happen, because you have a story for your life. Now, some people are really happy in their life, and they're just, because of their natural characteristics or their personality traits or whatever it may be, or they've landed in a really good position, or they're generally a positive, easygoing person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they might enjoy their story, and they're aware of the pitfalls, but overall they like the story of who they are, and they like the story of life in general and how they interact with it. And there's other people that just feel uncomfortable in their own skin and don't like and resent the life that all the cards that they've been given. And so that's where major changes, I believe, that can happen, is that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So what you're actually changing, you're changing the way that your consciousness looks at the story that you've been given.
Yeah.
And the avatar, and how you treat the avatar, because you've got to treat this avatar like the commodity it is, because this is where you live.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have an untidy house in the same way you wouldn't have an untidy mind or body, and that's where the room becomes an externalization of your internal state.
And there is also this idea that I am unhappy because my story doesn't match the status quo.
Well, is it the status quo, or is it your expectation of how you believe it should be?
Yes.
Based on what the status quo may have informed you.
So, because I am poor and I don't have a girlfriend, and I'm not particularly that attractive based on Brad Pitt as a well, that's how you need to look to be attractive, and all those things. My story suddenly looks pretty shit compared to Brad Pitt, who's a good-looking millionaire, who's very talented.
But you look at Brad Pitt's life and what he's gone through with Angelina Jolie and all this stuff that he's really suffered some.
Yeah.
And you when you look at it, there was one award show where he came out on the stage and he just had everyone was just applauding him for just turning up, because they know how difficult his struggle had been.
And
so even with all those parameters and those factors, it still doesn't guarantee what you're looking for.
Exactly. So you're comparing your life, which lots of people will do, to, I use Brad Pitt as an example, but any celebrity with lots of money.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
An archetype.
You don't know that they're not suffering too, even though they're a millionaire and they're all those things and they have all that stuff. Because invariably they will be. And they could be suffering for the exact opposite reason. They go,
Yes.
oh, I'm guilty. I've got everything. Look at me. I've got everything. I've got all this money. And
But the more you have, the bigger is the fall, isn't it?
yeah.
The more
But
you
yeah,
lose.
there was all these starving children in Africa, and here's me. I've got like freaking 80 million quid in the bank, or 150 million quid in the bank because I act a bit, and I'm happen to be what people believe is a good-looking thing, but I don't feel like that. So Brad Pitt and everybody else are doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. They're unsatisfied with their story, right? Because it's still a story. But they're comparing with everybody else's story. Whether that story is that I am super rich and I feel guilty about that because there are lots of poor people in the world, and therefore, how's that fair? Yeah. And then there are lots of people in the world that go, I'm really poor, and Brad Pitt's got everything, and that's not fair either. But every single person is doing is comparing stories.
And that's always been my thing, is that I think that you have a story about yourself, you have a story about the other people, you have a story about what life is or whatever it is. It's all you, but essentially it's all your story.
But they are.
So, but you own that, so you can change it because your story is predicated, and that's where all the thoughts come from. Because the thoughts are just going around a narrative that is playing itself out.
Yeah.
So once you change the narrative of the story, you change the thoughts that align with that. You literally resonate. You vibrate differently. And I think vibration has got a big thing to do with it. Sort of like.
Yeah,
because people talk about it elusively, or vibes, or the chemistry, or this kind of stuff. Because what they're talking to something that's a bit more ethereal, that they're not in control of. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, are you looking at this from a positive thing or a negative thing? So in the same way, like if you had peace, for example, or apathy, well, two are very similar if you were to look at them. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like another one would be anxiety and excitement. Both are really, like before you go on stage, you're like, I feel anxiety, but really it's excitement because it's your body's way of telling you ready to perform. So we all have these thoughts, feelings and emotions, but it's how we're treating them and what meaning we're attaching to them. What does this feeling mean? Oh, this means I'm anxious. Oh, this means I'm excited. So you're literally adding a story to the emotion that you're experiencing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. But
so if you change your story, you change everything.
Yeah.
Because you've changed the complete narrative to your life. So if you say, oh, it's all crap and it's going down here, whereas if you say, well, it's all good, then just changing that direction, that minute change here makes all the difference later on.